Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Lots to bring you in relation to Erik ten Hag. Obviously last night there was some more developments prompted by David Ornstein that have then led to everybody else putting something out. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about this basically how Erik ten Hag's got the job and the excitement of the future and his attention to detail and how he wants to lead and how he impressed the board and what he's likely to do and when he's likely to start and who we're likely to bring in. We'll delve into all that. There's a lot in the press this morning from numerous different outlets. Also be a little bit talking about transfer news. NKUNKU's been linked to us. Apparently we're in talks. We'll talk about that as well. And I also want to just dwell on a bit around Pochettino. Not because I want to talk about Pochettino, but just why we didn't go for Pochettino, why we were right not to go to Pochettino, and how it could be a new step in the right direction for Manchester United. But I suppose the first thing to talk about, Ten Hag official this week. Could it be announced this week? Some people feel that it could. I would say, I think David Ornstein said it last night. We said it on Monday, that the information is that it would be very surprising if Manchester United were to announce Erik ten Hag before the end of the week. I think Manchester United would like to announce it before the end of the week because they've settled on this person. Abdu, welcome to the United Stand Members Club. Appreciate your support, but United would love to announce this week because they want to start moving on, and they effectively are moving on. But obviously they've got to be respectful to Ajax, who they've got a very good relationship with. Ajax have got a Dutch Cup final on Sunday evening. So I don't expect this to be announced even probably next week, but certainly not this week. What's happened here is quite interesting because I had people messaging me yesterday afternoon saying, it's agreement's in place. And I said, agreement's been in place for a week. I don't know where you're getting briefed from, but this is not breaking news. This is slow sparks news. And they were like, well, no, I'm getting information that they've got an agreement in principle now. And I'm like, well, we had that information a week ago. What's actually happened with United is that they have agreed a deal with Erik ten Hag, but they can't announce it officially because of Ajax. So they're basically just spending, pretty much the last 2 weeks. They've known Erik ten Hag's going to be their manager. Certainly the last 8 days they've known he's their manager. And what they're doing is they're just doing all the contractual things and ironing out this, that and the other and everything you would expect. Taking their time on something they would have done a lot quicker if they could have announced it quicker. So I suppose it's the sort of modern media in a way that you get a situation whereby they've got to regenerate the same story to a point where the official announcement breaks the internet, I suppose. But effectively this deal has been done for at least 8 days and it's just about waiting. And I've always been quite relaxed about that. Welcome to Members Club, Dylan. I've always been quite relaxed about that because ultimately, it's more important that we know. I go back, probably 10 days ago and we're doing this show and we're going, look, it looks like Ten Hag's the favourite, but you just fear that this board and what it's done over the last 9 years will go with Pochettino. For the last 8 days, I've never been concerned. I've been pretty much 100% that we were going to get Erik ten Hag. There's no part of me that thinks that this won't happen. So, look, that's where we're at. I do want to talk about a couple of other things, but let me just bring you the latest around Erik ten Hag. There's a whole sway of information. So Erik ten Hag wants to bring Mitchell van der Gaag with him from Ajax when he joins Manchester United. Steve McLaren has been spoken to Ten Hag about United. However, there is not thought to have been any contact from the club about a role as of yet. So very important that Mitchell van der Gaag, if that's how you pronounce it, does come with Erik ten Hag. He's really well sought after in the European scene. He's his current assistant coach at Ajax, and I'm a firm believer that even if you go with Pochettino or you go with Mourinho, you've got to bring their coaching staff with them. I don't think but getting Erik ten Hag and then giving him Steve McLaren is the way to go. I think giving Erik ten Hag the job and bringing in the people he wants is the way to go. And if that's his Ajax coaching setup, which he's been working with for the last few years, then you have to do that. I wouldn't mind. For me, the priority is here, and maybe people agree, maybe they don't. The first priority for me that Erik ten Hag brings his Ajax coaching staff with him, and then we supplement it with a Van Persie or a Steve McLaren or a Mullenstein or a Jaap Stam. I don't want Erik ten Hag coming on his own and then building a team because he's already got to rebuild the Man United. Doesn't need to rebuild his coaching staff. Bring him into Manchester United with a coaching staff he already knows is set. Otherwise, you end up with the same situation Ralf Rangnick had. Very exciting coach as an interim, but doesn't bring any of the staff that he wants with him. So has to lean on Solskjaer's staff, who are loyal to Solskjaer and these players. And you end up with what we've had over the last few months. So very, very important. Simon Stone has said that Manchester United say no deal has been done, but sources in Netherlands suggest an agreement in principle is in place. It has been felt that Ten Hag's management style is more suited to the structure put in place, which include Murta as football director. I mean, that's Simon Stone, very close to the club. And look, again, I would reiterate here, there's nothing to panic about. It just feels to me like Manchester United are respecting Ajax, and I know for a fact that United are ready to announce this deal. Like all the marketing, all the all the publicity, the photos, they can press the button now and say Erik Ten Hag is official. But they can't do that without Ajax's say so. And especially, I mean, I'm doing a video at 2 o'clock about who is the priority signing for Erik Ten Hag, and there's actually two, one of which is an Ajax player. So United have got to be very careful how they deal with this anyway. They don't want to upset Ajax because they've got a good relationship with them. They don't want to upset them anyway because they actually might want to go and get one of their players as well. So they've got to be very careful how they deal with it. Which reminds me, actually, big shout out to our 2 new members this morning. We've got Dylan and we've got Abdu. You can join the members club by clicking the join button, which is pinned at the top of the live chat, or the join button below. Our latest exclusive video for the members, we did Rashford against Anthony last week as a head-to-head showing all their stats. This one that went up yesterday was Maguire against Timber of Ajax. You can watch that as a member, exclusively for free as a member. So if you want to support the channel, it's very much appreciated. And thanks for your comments on that video. It's a really good one, Timber against Maguire, and highlights again what a bad player Maguire is if you want to play a modern style of football, and how suitable someone like Timber or others could be. So check it out. I must just say as well, I'm not going to talk about Chelsea against Real Madrid, but bloody hell, if Rudiger's free, I don't think Man United can get Rudiger, but if you could get him for free, bloody hell, what a very, very good player he is in the modern era. Ten Hag has told Kingmakers Darren Fletcher and John Murta in their first meeting that the club's incoming manager must be allowed to lead from the front. This is coming from the Daily Mail. Ten Hag is known to have undertaken exhaustive research about his prospective new employers. He wanted to know why England's biggest club has spat respected coaches out like gum over the last decade. And obviously, I mean, I think that is something that is really important as well. That Erik Ten Hag is very much, and I'm learning more and more about him by the day. As recently as January, I probably still would have been saying, let's go and get Pochettino. I think it was the start of March where I was like, I'm all in on Ten Hag. I really started ramping up my research of him. I was always impressed with Ajax, but I was like, I don't know. But I'm learning more and more about him every day. And one of the things I've sort of become really aware of over the last couple of weeks, which maybe I wasn't, is his extensive attention to detail, his work ethic. And I just wonder whether he's picked this up from Pep Guardiola, because I actually prefer Klopp's style of football to Pep's. I actually prefer Klopp's personality to Pep's. But one thing I've always said about Pep Guardiola is, if Sam Allardyce turns up on a Saturday morning and just says, go out there and win the second ball, and Tony Pulis says that, Pep Guardiola will sit his team down all week analysing every little bit of movement to play a false nine system against a different opposition. His attention to detail is ridiculous, and it appears that Erik Ten Hag is very much the same. So I think we're going to see a very, very, very high level of attention to detail from Manchester United and Erik Ten Hag. I think it's going to be very exciting. Tom Blake, welcome to the United Stand Members Club. Appreciate that. Mark, hope you're feeling better, mate. Says Andy and Bruno. I'm up and down. Like I thought last night after the watch along, I was reasonable, and then I woke up at 5 feeling terrible again. So just have to keep taking the pills, and you know when it wears off, take them again. But yeah, we will see. Contracts of this magnitude take some time, says the Times, which is likely to be one of the reasons why it's taken Manchester United so long to announce Ten Hag as their new manager. He is the preferred candidate. Around 2 weeks ago this was decided, and it was left to Richard Arnold and co-chairman Joel Glazer to rubber stamp the appointment. And Ten Hag seems likely to bring his assistant Mitchell van de Gaag with him. Given Ten Hag's lack of Premier League experience, it's thought it would be valuable to also have someone who has had experience of playing or working in the Premier League, and that's from the Telegraph. So I think in general there's just so many updates from the Telegraph, the Athletic, BBC, Times. Romano has said something which I've not even told you about. I'll tell you what Romano said this morning. So they're all coming out, and it's funny because 3 weeks ago we were getting bits of information about Erik ten Hag, and we were saying we want it from all these lot, and now we're getting it on a daily basis. So Fabrizio Romano has said this morning Manchester United are working to prepare the contracts and paperwork this week in order to announce Erik ten Hag's appointment as soon as possible. Sources close to the manager consider it a matter of time. And that's where we're at, really. But what we're starting to see now with Erik ten Hag is this... he wants to lead, he wants to be in control. The reason he got the job is he was very impressive in the interview. He spoke to Fletcher and Murta about the structure of the club. He spoke about the mistakes of the past. He spoke about the plans for the future. He's got very distinctive ideas of what he wants in relation to his coaching staff, how he wants to develop the club, what he wants to do with certain players. You might not like it, but he's been very insistent that he can get the best out of people like Marcus Rashford and others. So it was a very attractive proposition for Manchester United, and he did a fantastic job because there is no doubt that the club was looking at Pochettino. And I want to talk about transfers and NKUNKU in a minute, but look, in relation to Erik ten Hag, we're very much at the stage now with the press where they've moved on from the fact that this deal is going to happen. They're now really spending their time trying to figure out who his coaching staff is going to be. That's a big indication as to how much this deal is done, because we're now talking about his vision for the future. People are even saying that he'll only have 3 days before we go on the tour in early July. He'll be working on this job from June. There's no doubt about that. Manchester United will be signing players in June. They're not going to wait until Erik ten Hag's officially joined the club on the start of July. We'll be doing deals in June. Mark, if you could pick players for Manchester United for every summer to rebuild, who would they be, and hope you feel better soon, says Jude. Well, I can't do that, Jude. Thank you very much for the get well soon, but I can't predict the players. I did a video yesterday about who I think should go. There was 9 players this summer, and I'd probably get rid of another 5 next year. But I said it on Twitter today. I think that I feel very positive around Manchester United this morning. And I know some people don't. And I know some people are like, you know, they're not feeling like that because the season has been really disappointing. But I put that on the players. Like, the players have caused this. And Erik ten Hag can't polish turds. And that team has got a lot of turds and a lot of untrustworthy players in it. And it's going to take him time. But I feel far positive for the first time in a while, because I just feel like the club has made a big change, and I know people don't want to give the club a chance, and I get that, but I do applaud it when it happened and still continue to applaud it. I'm not singing from the rafters or anything like that, but this is a big new direction for Manchester United, and I don't really understand why people don't get it. Edison Alvarez from Ajax would be perfect CDM, says Daniel Kirk. Welcome to the Members Club, Tom. And it's more worrying the new manager feels he needs to have these agreements in place before taking the job, says Aram. But yeah, but they weren't in place for other managers, Aram, so he's absolutely correct. Great game last night. If it had been in a third of the fight and desire, we would be okay, says David Miller. But yeah, I don't really understand why some Manchester United fans aren't as positive as I think that they should be. I mean, it's not for me or you to tell anybody how to think, but this was an underdog story with Erik ten Hag. I mean, you've got every ex-player, you've got every media outlet pushing Pochettino and not pushing Erik ten Hag. Now, we know over the last 9 years that Manchester United would have appointed Erik ten Hag, Pochettino. Ed Woodward would have appointed Pochettino. I'm absolutely convinced that if Ed Woodward was still the CEO, Pochettino would be the manager. And I think that the club not taking notice of the wider media, not taking notice of previous employees, and not taking notice of ex-players is a massive step in the right direction. There are no guarantees this is going to work. It's one step in the right direction. But what they need to do now is give this manager the freedom and backing to rebuild this football club over the next 3 years. And I, for one, am very excited about that. And I think you're never going to get every fan behind the club because every fan has their own different opinion. But I think there's a massive majority who are really enthused by this Erik ten Hag appointment. And I think it's really important to get behind it. Of course, there's massive mistakes at Manchester United. And I mean, I'm not a fan of the Glazers, of course, but as I keep saying, unless we can do a Chelsea where we have 6 or 7 billionaires lining up to buy the club, and we as fans can interact with those buyers and figure out who's the best buyer for the club, we're not in that position at the moment. There is no viable alternative to the Glazers, and that's a shame on the fan base that nobody's actually took the time to figure out that that is the best path forward. I mean, telling the Glazers we don't like them, what's that going to do? We might get another Zoom call in June. We need to be, if we don't want the Glazers in charge, we need to be like they are. ruthless, clever business people, and we need to find an alternative to buy our football club. And when you've got that, then you can force the Glazers out. But nobody seems to listen to this. Nobody seems to get it. Chelsea have got 7 billionaires, 7 different consortiums wanting to buy their football club. If Manchester United was for sale, we would have the same. You need to create a situation where Man United is for sale because the fans say it's for sale. Now, who wants to buy the club? We'll get behind you and help you get the Glazers out. That's the way forward for Manchester United. But that's not viable at the moment because nobody's doing anything about it. So I feel in the short term, we've got this manager. There seems to be a change in the way the club wants to go. And I'm positive about that. I mean, he will get backed in the summer because we're not going to be in the Champions League. And we always spend a lot of money when we're not in the Champions League. So if we've got the right manager with the right backing and the right ideas, this could be the start of something. Peaceful, welcome to the United Stand Members Club. And love the new members videos. Keep them up, says Sambo. Thanks, pal. What do these agreements mean if the club don't keep to them? Does Erik ten Hag leave citing breach of contract and get himself paid up? Hopefully that's a hypothetical question, says Michael Neal. Well, look, I'm putting a lot of faith in the fact that we've got a new CEO, we've got a new structure at the football club. We are looking for another director of football. I wouldn't go to sleep on the fact that Paul Mitchell could still end up coming to this football club. Ralph Rangnick's going to stay as a consultant. The structure around Manchester United, comparable to 2 years ago, is very different. If you look about Man United 2 years ago, it's only a year since John Murtough was director of football. 2 years ago, we had Ed Woodward as the CEO, and then we had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as the manager, and then basically they were all having a meeting together, Woodward, Solskjaer, Phelan, head of scouting, and that was your recruitment. 2 years later, we've got Erik ten Hag in charge, we've got Ralph Rangnick as a consultant, we've got a director of football in Murtough, we've got a technical director in Fletcher, and we're trying to bring in another sort of assistant to the director of football. The football structure in the football club is changing, and we've got a new CEO who wants the football side to be dealt with by the football people. So there is a change there. I don't know whether it's going to be successful, but there is a change. Would you rather Conference League or no Europe, says Johnny? Yeah, it's a tough one to decide, that one, really. I mean, I think the Conference League is an embarrassment, but with Ten Hag wanting his way in place before he joins, does that not show how we are viewed in the football world? A joke, really, says Chilled. I mean, look, I get it. A lot of people are saying this, but I mean, what? I suppose everybody's got to approach it in a different way. I sense a lot of negativity, and I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, I've seen 3 people this morning saying, well, what if they don't give Ten Hag what he wants? Oh, it's embarrassing that Ten Hag has to ask for this, that and the other. Well, he's still got the job, still wants the job. It's almost like people are trying to create negativity before he's even in place. And I think as a fan base, we've got a responsibility here. We wanted this man as our manager. We need to get behind him and stop looking for excuses for it to fail. We already know the big problems at this club is going to be the players. I think you've got to get behind the manager and give him a chance and see what happens over the summer. Because look, you know what? I was going to mention Pochettino. I think we've done really well not to end up with Pochettino. And my big fear with Pochettino is that we would have wasted 3 years. I've spent 3 years watching Solskjaer, Carrick, Phelan and McKenna basically survive. And I think you can go to Man United and survive. If we'd given Pochettino the job and his main objective was to stay in the job, he would have been in the job for 3 years. Because that's what Solskjaer's objective was. I mean, I'll argue this with anybody. When Solskjaer got that job, he was so grateful. He was never going to make any waves. Never. Remember when them fans broke into Carrington and they were having a go at Solskjaer and he was like, oh, the Glazers are all right. He was always indebted to the Glazers because he couldn't believe how lucky he was to get that job. And he was never going to say anything against them. And from day one, it was very clear that Solskjaer just wanted to stay in the job. I mean, and that to me that's a big problem because as a Manchester United manager, your objective should not be keeping your job. It should be making Man United a big team again. And I think Pochettino would have been like that as well. I think his objective would have been to stay in a job. And I think most managers in the Premier League, from David Moyes to Graham Potter, could take the Man United job now and stay in post for 3 years because the squad that we've got, the money that's available. You can be fighting for 4th every year, really. I mean, we're still fighting for 4th now, despite our worst ever season. I mean, we're going to get our worst ever points tally, and yet if we won, I think if we could win 5 of our next games, that would only give us 66 points. We'd probably still get maybe top 4. So Yeah, I'm very happy that we didn't go for Pochettino, because I think he would have been a manager that would have just set us back 3 years. You've always said that you think things will get worse before they get better. Do you think that that ends with Ten Hag can't have another season like this, as Aaron? No, 100%, mate. I think things will get worse. I expect bad results next season. I do not want to be sat here next season with people saying, oh, get Ten Hag out, it's not working. If we've got any fans in our fan base that are going to turn on the manager next September, October, November, you need to go now, because we will have bad results. Liverpool and Man City will still probably batter us next season, because he's not going to be able to clear out McTominay and Maguire and everybody else straight away. They'll still be starting games for United, and therefore will still be weak. It's going to take time. Is Richard Arnold our glimmer of hope we will see in the next transfer season, says Sonia? Look, Erik Ten Hag is one step forward. He's a small step forward. How big those step forwards continue is dependent on what the board do in the transfer market. Ray says, I think Ten Hag coming in, genuine change. I feel Arnold is different than Ed. He wants to give control to football people, and that's a big difference. I agree, Ray. I mean, look, the proof will be in the pudding. We'd be massively naive. I just can't wait for Eric's first press, says Daniel Kirk. We'd be massively naive to start saying everything's fantastic, but I think we've got to give it a chance. I would agree with that. And Alex says trust the process. I think we've got to give it a chance, and to give it a chance, you've got to be all in. This is Erik Ten Hag I'm giving a chance to. Everybody else, let's see what you can do. But I would say this. I think whatever you think about CEOs at Manchester United, I'm absolutely convinced if Ed Woodward hadn't left in February, we would have Pochettino as our manager. I think Pochettino expected to get the job. And I think back in November, there was almost an agreement that Pochettino would get the job in the summer with him and Ed Woodward. I think there was almost a gentleman's agreement. I always felt that. I think the new CEO has come in and said, I'm going to make my own decisions, and I'm going to trust my people to go and do the interviews. And ultimately, Erik Ten Hag has ended up getting the job. And they've turned their back on Pochettino, and they've turned their back on the media's favourite appointment, which is Pochettino. And they've ignored ex-players who wanted Pochettino. I mean, look, it's a brave new world for Manchester United. And I don't want to rub it in, but it's a brave new world for Manchester United because, I mean, I almost feel there's a contradiction in our fan base at times. They're like, oh, this club doesn't listen to the fans, it doesn't listen to the fans. They've just appointed a manager that only the fans wanted. Like, they literally have appointed the manager that the fans wanted. There was rumours that Richard Arnold was going to talk to ex-players like Gary Neville about the next manager. Gary Neville's been on the telly saying, give it to Pochettino. Rio Ferdinand said it. We've had Incy on this show. We've had Teddy Sheringham, Nicky Butt, who used to work at the club, get Pochettino. People, the media, countless people, get Pochettino, get Pochettino, get Pochettino. And the club have appointed Erik Ten Hag. Who was saying get Erik Ten Hag? It was the fans. 90% of our fan base, well, 80 to 90% of our fan base wanted Erik Ten Hag. Even journalists close to the club were pushing for Pochettino as well. So don't do yourself a disservice, and don't also not put some credit with the club, because the easiest decision in the world was Pochettino. And they could have rode that. It's not like the club haven't made decisions before that they know are unpopular with the fan base and they just ride it out. They could easily have gone with Pochettino. They know that they've upset people in the media. They know that they've upset ex-players, and they know that leaves them exposed next season when there's games on the TV and those ex-players are like, they should have gone with Poch. But the club decided to go with Ten Hag, and it was a brand new reset direction for the club. And it was a brave decision. And it was the decision the fans wanted. So I almost find myself sat here this morning going, got some fans moaning about this, that and the other. And yet there can be no confusion about this. The club have chosen a manager the fans want and ignored ex-players, media, and our previous CEO on Pochettino. Thoughts on Romagnelli on a free agent, has captain AC Milan and is a fast ball playing centre-back, might not be first choice but could be a good opportunity, says Arkin. I think it's an idea, Arkin, but I think it's an idea that lives in your head. I've heard nothing about Man United looking at him. I think Ten Hag coming in, genuine change. I feel Arnold is different than Ed. He wants to give control to football people. That's the big difference, says Ray. Yeah, look, I'm willing to give it a chance. I think I think there's a lot of unhappy fans at the moment. I think we can understand that because of the way the team have played. But I think we've got to be very careful not to fall into the trap of let's all get angry about the club because they're not doing well on the pitch. If we were going to win the FA Cup and we were in the top 4, I don't think people would be so angry. I think they'd be really excited. This season's been appalling, but I put that blame on the players. I don't really think this season's about the way the club's run. It always is because the club bought these players, but if these players had performed even 70% effort, we would have been in the top 4. They downed tools in November, and it's cost us, and that's for the players. I look forward to the summer. I look forward to what we're going to do next, and I think there is potentially a new direction for this football club, and I'm certainly willing to give it a chance and see what happens. Poch finished ahead of Pep and Klopp in their first season in the Prem. We can't react on the first season. We have to trust the process with Ten Hag, says Click Arat. Yeah, we do. And as I said, in relation to transfers, there was some story last night that we're in talks with NKUNKU from Leipzig. This is certainly a player that Erik Ten Hag would benefit from, and it's certainly a player that Ralf Rangnick will be recommending to Manchester United. We know that Rudiger's another player that Ralf Rangnick has suggested United move for. I can see Rudiger going to Real Madrid. He played brilliant against them last night, but look, I'd love Rudiger to come to Manchester United. But in relation to NKUNKU, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm going to do a video at 2 o'clock about the 2 players that I've heard that Erik Ten Hag really wants. You might find one of them very interesting, but do I think that? I think United have got a few paths to go down this summer, and it almost depends on how much money we've got to spend. We keep hearing about Declan Rice and Harry Kane, but then when you mention NKUNKU, people go, "Oh, we can't afford to spend 50 million on him." Or you mentioned Darwin Núñez, "Oh, we can't afford to spend 60 million on him," and yet we're being linked to Declan Rice, who will be north of 80 million quid. So I think the first step for Manchester United is to establish how much money they've got and how many players they want to buy. Now, I think we're all locked into we need to buy at least 3. Some people think we should buy 5. I think we should buy as many as we can, based on who's available. I know it's going to take time, but if we can get 5 players this summer, get 5 players, because I think next summer we'll need another 4. And if you only get 3 this summer, it's going to take longer to get where you need to get. We know we need a centre back. We know we need a holding midfielder. We know we need a striker, and we know we need a wide player. That's 4 players. But we probably also need another midfielder or a right back. So go and get 5. Off the top of my head, I would go and get either Rudiger or Timber as centre back. I would get Tchouaméni or Lema or someone like that as a midfielder, or both. Striker, I would do everything I could to get Darwin Núñez. If you can't get him, who are the options? And as my wide player, I think you could go for NKUNKU. You could go for Anthony, because NKUNKU can play anywhere. He can play as a false 9. He can also play as a left-sided attacker, a right-sided attacker, or as a cam. And Anthony is obviously a very exciting player. And I'd probably go and buy a right back as well. I mean, look, Lamptey at Brighton, that's Spence who's on loan from Middlesbrough at Forest at the moment. I think that those 2 players have got the potential to be absolutely superstar right backs who are not attached to a big club at the moment. So we're not going to get Bellingham. I would try and buy 5 players this summer. And the interesting thing is that none of those players I've mentioned are going to be massive amounts of signings. So, and I remember what we said yesterday as well. We're going to save about £50 million a year in wages just by getting rid of a lot of these players that are out of contract or want to leave as well. So there's a lot of money, Man United. There's a silent assassin here, basically, that we need to be aware of. If United say we're spending £150 million on players, what an amazing summer we've had. Remember, 150 million spend straight away is only 100 million, because we're going to save 50 million in wages. Cavani's on 200 grand a week. That's 800 grand a year, let's say a month. So that's over 10 million pounds just for Cavani. Pogba's probably another 15 million, so that's 25 million just from Cavani and Pogba. Lingard, he'll be on about 6 million a year, so that's 30 million just for Lingard, Cavani and Pogba. That's 30 million pounds a year straight into the club's pocket. All right, they're not getting any transfer fee, but it's still 30 million. So even if you spend 150 million, Cavani, Lingard and Pogba go in, means your net spends 120. So you've got to keep an eye on that this summer, and we'll certainly be talking about it a lot. I think United need to spend 200 million. 200 million needs to be spent, because I know for a fact that we're going to make at least 70 million from sales and wages, which brings that down to 130. So we should be spending 200 million pounds this summer. 200 million pounds, that's 5. It's certainly 4, but should be 5 signings, because not everyone's going to cost you 50 million. So 200 million spend for United and make about 70 makes 130 million pound spend. Mark, what would you do? What do you think would have happened if we went for Conte, finished top 4? We would have got top 4 if we'd gone for Conte. Yeah, but those days are gone. Mauro Icardi is a striker I'd love to see in United. He's leaving PSG. Yeah, Thomas, I do like Icardi, but he's got more baggage than Thomas Cook. He's not worth... I mean, even I would say, let's not go near Icardi. We should look at Basuma as a potential signing, says EJ. Yeah, I do like the look of Basuma, but there are lots of players that we could look at. I mean, look, even on the midfield position, just in this country, Basuma, Neves, they're both going to be about 40 million quid. So, look, I could spend 200. I'll do it for you straight away. That's Spence or Lamptey from Brighton or Middlesbrough. I think you get them for about 30 million. I really do. Maybe Lamptey's a little bit more, considering they got 50 for White. But you get that Spence from Middlesbrough for 30 million, I reckon. Tchouaméni or Neves, you're going to get for about 40, I think. I can't be arsed with this, actually. I'm not. There's no. I just thought it was a good idea, but it's not. You can't speculate on what prices are going to be, because they could be up and down. But I certainly think we do need to spend about 200 million. And what I would say is just figure out the wages of all the players that. I mean, Mata's going to go. That's another 140 grand. That's another 600 grand per month. That's another 7 million. 7 million. From Mata going as well. I mean, Mata, Lingard, Pogba and Cavani, about £40 million a year in wages there. It's a lot of money, isn't it? And it's just sitting there in the club, 40 million. So spend it. That's what I say. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for watching. I've got a cracking video at 2 o'clock. Raz, I really am like that at the moment. I do not feel well at all, but just battling through each show. And it does help. Because to be honest with you, I'm a terrible patient. I absolutely hate just sitting there watching TV. I'm bored. So I'm glad that I get to do the morning shows, even if it wipes me out for a few hours. Dan Juma is a player to consider. I mean, Villarreal in the semi-finals of the Champions League. That's unbelievable. But look... 2 o'clock, very good video. The 2 signings that Ten Hag wants. We'll be talking about that, amongst other things. And if you want to become a member, click the join button. It's pinned in the top of the live chat, or it's in the video description. Fantastic video, Timber against Maguire. You can always also check out the one from last week, which is Anthony versus Rashford. Head-to-head statistical analysis exclusively for the members, as a thank you to the members. Thanks for joining. Daniel's just joined as well. We'll have this exclusive content for you every week now, as well as you get your badge. We've got some early merch drops for you if you're interested in that. And also we've got some other exciting content that's going to be on there as well. Of course, remember, if you're not a member, you still get your 8 o'clock, your 2 o'clock, your 8 o'clock, your 10 o'clock in the morning shows. Everything you've always got for free, you'll always get for free. This is just a reward for our members, of course. And if you want to click and join, thank you very much for that. Okay, we will see you at 2 o'clock. And I don't know about FIFA. I'll see how I feel. Just trying to get through. At the moment, so we'll see what I don't know about career mode, because career mode is very interactive, isn't it? Thanks everyone for watching, and welcome to the members club. James, you're a legend. Thanks everyone who does join, and I'll speak to you all in a bit.